This is my 2021 Jeep Gladiator Rubicon, and this is the original window sticker of this truck. What I want to talk about today is what are the factory options that you really should get on your Gladiator, what's worth the money, but also what isn't worth the money. And if you're thinking of setting up a Gladiator for camping, overlanding, off-roading, or whatever you might be doing, what are the options that in the long run are going to save you money if you buy them as factory options versus doing stuff aftermarket in the future? Well, today that's what we're going to go over. So the Gladiator comes in a lot of different trim levels, and the price range is really huge, starting with base models in the $30,000 to $40,000 range, going all the way up to fully loaded Rubicons and Mojaves with a diesel engine that can be approaching $70,000, as crazy as that sounds. So while that subject is really going to be the topic for a future video, so stay tuned for that. To give you a general sense of it, you start with a sport model, which can be a great value if you add certain options to it. We'll talk about that. You go up to something like the Overland, which is a more street-oriented Gladiator. You have the Willys package, which is mostly appearance stuff. And then you get into your Rubicon and Mojave models, which start to add a lot of the off-road equipment. So just briefly, the Mojave model is more set up for high-speed desert running. It doesn't have the front disconnecting sway bar or the front locking differential. It also has a reinforced frame, so you can go over like maybe very small jumps. The Rubicon is your traditional rock crawling setup. So you've got, that front disconnecting sway bar and the front locking differential and all the cool off-road hardware. So this is also not a video deep diving into the engine choices because we're going to cover that later on. But essentially on the Gladiator, at least for right now, you've only got two choices. You've got the 3.6 liter Pentastar V6 and you have the Gen 3 EcoDiesel 3 liter diesel engine. I chose the Pentastar V6 because it's proven to be extremely durable and reliable in other Chrysler products. And because it's a Jeep, I just want something simple that I know is going to last forever and not give me any issues. It is true that the diesel gives you more torque and it's going to feel better if you're pulling a load, and it might even feel better off-road and you have that low-end torque, but I didn't want the extra expense of the diesel and the extra complication and the extra weight. The other downside to that extra weight with the diesel is that the payload capacity on a diesel Gladiator is greatly reduced, and it's really going to mean that you can't tow a trailer, at least if you care about staying within your payload limits. There's a lot of diesel Gladiators with 900-pound payload capacities. Well, that's simply not going to be possible to put your family in the truck and hitch up any sort of decent-sized travel trailer and not be way over the payload limit. So that's something to keep in mind. So I told you this was going to be a video about factory options, so that's what we're going to get into now. So starting here at the front of the truck, there's a couple things I want to highlight. The first thing is the steel bumper group. So this option, if I look at my window sticker here, this is listed as winch capable steel front bumper, $845. That is an option that I think you should absolutely get on your Gladiator, because if you don't get it, and if you do want to add a winch down the line, you're going to have to be changing out the bumper for a different kind of bumper. I like the steel bumper. It's strong, it's durable, it allows you to go ahead and bolt a winch right in here very easily, and it looks factory, it looks great. I get tons of compliments on it. And being a Mopar accessory, it's just designed to work really well from the vehicle. I'm not a huge fan of aftermarket parts in general. So that's one thing I think you should get. It's well worth the 800 bucks. The other thing on the front here is this little camera right here. So if I look at my window sticker here, it's called the forward-facing TrailCam. It's $595. And the reason I think that's worth every cent is the following. This camera, when you're on the trail, you can turn it on when you're driving, I think up to 25 miles an hour. And if you have the Taser JL, the little plug-in thing to change your computer, which we'll talk about later, you can run it at any speed, which I like. But this allows you to see over hills and see over obstacles and see what's in front of your Jeep when you're on the trail. But there's other advantages to having this. When you're parking, when you're pulling into a parking spot in a crowded parking lot, you can turn this camera on and see in front of the Jeep to see how far you want to pull forward so you don't pull into a concrete post or a tree or whatever it might be, or the car in front of you. So this is worth every cent because it integrates into the Uconnect screen and it works really, really well, and it's super crisp and clear, worth every penny, and I would not try to install this in the aftermarket. So go ahead and check that option box. So while I'm up here at the front, there is one other thing I want to talk about, which is a little bit harder to decide if it's worth it, and that is the LED lighting group. So the LED lighting group includes the LED headlamps, the LED fog lights, and the LED tail lamps. but it costs $1,295. So that's a pretty steep option. So my thinking is that if you're getting a higher end model of the Gladiator, a lot of them are going to have this option. I think for me it's worth it because I love the way that the LEDs look. They have cool running lights. The fog lights actually illuminate really well, surprisingly, and the taillights look really cool, and it just makes the whole vehicle look more modern. I think it's overpriced. I think Jeep is gouging for that, and I think when you look at most modern new vehicles out there, they have LED headlights standard, so it seems kind of strange that you have to pay so much for it. So I'm kind of torn on that one, but I would get it. Is it a good value? Probably not. I brought you around here to the back of the Gladiator to show you something in the bed. So this factory spray-in bed liner is only $495. That's a bargain, and that is something you absolutely should make sure your Gladiator comes with, because if you go to get an aftermarket bed liner, it's probably going to cost more than that. You're going to have to spend time to go get it done, and it's not going to be as good a quality and fit and finish as the factory bed liner is. I bought a few new trucks in the past 10 years, and I always make sure to get the factory bed liner. It's usually a better deal than aftermarket, and then you just have it and you don't have to worry about it. So that is a 2 thumbs up for me. Okay, so we're going to start to work our way inside the cab of the Gladiator and talk about the options in here. The first thing I want to address is the so-called leather seats. So this is a $1,600 option from Jeep, which is kind of a ripoff, if I'm being honest. But I still recommend getting it, and here's why. If you're going to off-road your Jeep, you're going to have dust. Or if you have kids, you're going to have mess. You can wipe these seats down. They're not actually leather, so Jeep is doing what every other car manufacturer does, gouging people, calling things leather seats when they're actually like vinyl or some sort of synthetic material. But you can wipe them down and clean them, and they don't absorb odors, sweat, dirt, spills in the way that a fabric seat would. The downside to leather seats, or vinyl seats as they actually are, is that they, in the sun, if they sit in the sun, they get hot. And because Jeep doesn't offer cooled seats, which I think is a big missed opportunity, that's something that you have to think about. I'm actually okay with the fact that they're not real leather and that they're fake leather, because I think it won't wrinkle like real leather does, and it'll probably last longer. And it's easier to clean because you don't need to use special leather products. You can just use basically water or a very, very slight soap solution. So I'm fine with it, and I think it's worth the money, but I don't think it's a great value. I think they're overcharging for it. So working our way back inside the cab of the Gladiator, there's a few things here I want to point out. The first is the cold weather group. So if I look here, it's $995. It gives you heated front seats, a heated steering wheel, and a remote start system. I think you should get that, and here's why. Even if you live in a relatively mild climate, on cooler or colder days, especially if you're driving with the top off, which I hope you are if you have a Jeep, the heated wheel, it starts up instantly and it's really warm, and it just feels great on your hands because leather wheels can tend to be cold. So I think that's great. The heated seats work really well. They fire up really fast, and they're great when the temperatures drop or when you're driving with the top and the doors off on a cold day, which I love to do. The third thing is the remote start system. It works really well, and it's a great thing to have in any climate because you can remote start your vehicle from your house or from the grocery store and have the heater going or have the air conditioning going depending on the temperature. So all in all, for $1,000, I think that's a good value, and I think it's something that I'd recommend that you get. Another thing on the inside that I want you to really take note of, and please get this on your Jeep, are these auxiliary switches here. So this is only a $295 option, and it gives you 4 programmable switches. Now, to add this after the fact, after you buy your Jeep, is expensive and time consuming, and you're better off and cheaper to go ahead and get it from the factory. The switches are programmable, so that means you can go into the software of the Jeep, the Uconnect system, and program whether you want momentary switches or permanently on switches, and whether you want them on or off with the Jeep's ignition or powered all the time. If you're going to be doing any sort of lighting, winches, camping, overlanding, fridges, anything you might want to power from the Jeep, whatever it might be, you're going to need those switches, and it's a freaking bargain at $300. So make sure you don't miss that option group. One other thing I want to mention while I'm here is that I have the adaptive cruise control. Now, this is a personal thing. I'm a cruise control person, and once I started using adaptive cruise control systems a few years ago, I fell in love with them. We have them on my wife's car, and I made sure to get them on the Jeep. It's a little bit expensive because to get these safety groups, you have to get the Jeep Active Safety Group for $900, which gives you the rear parking system and the blind spot detection. And then you have to get the $795 adaptive cruise control with collision warning plus. Overall, I love active safety systems, but I understand some Jeep owners and some Jeep enthusiasts don't want that, and that's great. You don't have to get it. But when you're driving in traffic, the ability to keep pace with traffic in front of you and drive itself through traffic jams, to me, is an amazing thing, and I would not be without it. I would also not be without the blind spot monitors and those kinds of things. So to each his own, but I think that's a good option to have. So let's talk about some of the factory options that I don't think you necessarily need and ways you can save money when configuring your new Gladiator. So the first is going to be the color match hardtop and the color match fenders. Now this is going to be a personal preference thing, but the reason I say it is you can save quite a bit of money by getting the black hardtop. I actually think the black hardtop, because it gives contrast to the body color and kind of matches the tires, wheels, mirrors and stuff like that, looks better than the color match hardtop. And getting the black hardtop costs quite a bit less. I think it's $1,000 savings versus getting the color match one. So I recommend going with the black, but that's personal preference. You may want the colored one. Now the fenders, I actually probably would have preferred to have black fenders because I like the contrast, but I couldn't find the Gladiator exactly how I wanted. This had everything configured how I wanted except for maybe this one thing. So I did get the body color fenders, which cost an additional $700 here. I'm looking at my window sticker. I would have preferred to save that $700 and just get the black fenders, but again, that's personal preference. Another option that I think you can probably do without that kind of seems overpriced to me is the hardtop headliner. So I paid $555 to get these little fabric headliners that go into the hardtop of the Jeep. I haven't scientifically tested this, but just looking at what they are, I have a hard time believing that they're providing much in the way of sound insulation or temperature insulation. So I'm not sure. You might want to look at aftermarket options for that to see if that would be a better deal, but it seems a little bit steep to pay $500 for a few pieces of fabric that are glued to the headliner. I don't know, that's just me. So wrapping up with some final thoughts about how to configure a Gladiator. What I love about Jeep is that they give you so many options from the factory and how you want to configure your truck. The other thing I love, of course, being a Jeep, is that there's a huge aftermarket and you can customize it to your heart's content. And there's varying tastes out there. We all know the arguments online about those weird, grills that people put on and all the things that people have different opinions about. But the fact is you can make it your own, and that's something that's kind of unique to the Jeep. There's no denying that the Gladiator can become very, very expensive when you add a lot of factory options, but some of the options add genuine value and would be cheaper getting from the factory than going in the aftermarket, and that's what I hope I covered in this video. So let me know what you all think about this. What options would you get on your Gladiator and what options would you skip? Or if you did buy a Gladiator, what do you find useful and what do you find to be a waste of money? Please let me know down below in the comments. I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate your support. If you haven't already, you can support me on Patreon. You can subscribe to the channel. You can leave a comment and give the video a thumbs up. That really helps me grow on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you on our trail. See you in the next video.